Hi, everyone. What you're hearing today is a preview of our patron-only content. This is the first patron-only episode, and I've decided to release it on the main feed as well as a little treat and a little teaser. These patron-only episodes, as of right now, will release once a month at the end of the month on Sundays, and will be more laid back and casual and conversational in nature. The main show, we kind of do a lot of planning, putting together research, and etc. Not so for these. It's far more conversational. It's shorter. Really tried to get it under an hour for this one, but the conversation was just very good, so you know how it goes. But I think they're a lot of fun, and it's a really nice change of pace. If you would like to keep up with these episodes and the content that we're going to be putting out on the Patreon-only feed, you can do so by heading over to patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. You can be like the other folks who have decided to support the show and kick us a couple bucks, and you can see what all the bonus content we offer is and what tier is right for you. Once again, that's patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. Thanks. On to the show. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Pixel Project Radio, Sunday Short. Sunday Shorts? Relaxin with Rick. I'm not sure what I'm going to call this yet. Maybe I'll retcon it later and put in a better name. But yeah, this is going to be the first patron-exclusive episode. So if you're hearing this, you're already supporting. Thank you. We appreciate that greatly. Today, I've got a very special guest with me, first time on the show, certainly not the last time, we hope. We've got Alex from Lo-Fi Gaming. How's it going, Alex? Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I've been following your journey for a while, and I just want to say congrats on launching your Patreon. That's super cool. I'm excited for you.
Oh, thanks, dude. I really appreciate that. And likewise, I've been following you all for quite a while now. I don't remember which episode it was that grabbed me right away. It may have been a Zelda episode. I think it was a Zelda episode. It was either that or Red Dead Redemption 2, but I haven't actually played that one. So maybe it was Zelda. It must have been Zelda, right?
Yeah, we did Skyward Sword a while ago, and we also did Ocarina of Time or Ocarina of Time, depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah, I've always said Ocarina. I didn't know there was a discrepancy.
I think you're correct, but we just, at least in my household and like all my friends and everything, we just call it Ocarina, but I think we're wrong. It's one of those deals.
To all of the Ocarina players listening, write in and let us know. Settle this debate once and for all. Verified Ocarina players only.
I can dig it, although I'm not going to change. Ocarina for life.
I feel you.
Cool. It's actually kind of topical, man. One of the first episodes that I listened to of yours was your GoldenEye 007 episode. And I think today, or maybe it was either today or yesterday, is the official 25th anniversary of that game. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, that was yesterday. I had forgotten about that until I saw Keith and Chris, Keith from Main Quest and Chris from Retro Hangover posting about it. But yeah, it's been 25 years. Insane.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
Feels like just yesterday. I mean, I never played it as a kid, but like I had friends that had it. It's insane, dude. The passage of time spares no one, and I'm feeling it.
Sure. Yeah, I played a lot of that game. I actually didn't own it until the tail end of excuse me. I still play with my Nintendo 64, but it was a game that my parents didn't want in the household. But we snuck it in like a little later on. But it wasn't one that we got off right off the bat. It was definitely a game that I played mostly over at friends' houses.
Scandalous.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's actually a pretty good segue because GoldenEye 007, or at least I feel, would be a perfect companion to what we're talking about today. We are talking about a brand new fun little piece of hardware that has taken the gaming community somewhat by storm. We're talking about Valve's newest piece of hardware, the Steam Deck.
Yes, sir. And you recently got your Steam Deck, right?
Yes, about 10 days ago I got it. I reserved it I reserved it in July of 2021, and a year came and went, a couple weeks went by, and then they said, hey, it's ready. And at first I wasn't sure. I had set aside at that time, like when I first reserved it, I set aside half of the money. And, it's still a fair chunk of change. So I was like, I don't know, like that's money. But I decided to pull the trigger. And man, I can't tell you how happy I am, because this thing is, spoiler alert, this thing is terrific. I'm so psyched to talk about it with somebody else that has one. You got one too, right?
I do, and I love to hear that, man, because these are all toys, but this is a cool toy, dude. This is a super cool toy. And I've been enjoying it. I got lucky in the sense that I can't remember when. So I'm a huge handheld guy, right? So I love my handhelds, Game Boy, Game Gear, etc. The Nintendo Switch I would really like as well. And when they announced this, I was like, oh, I set an alarm, and right when it was available, I was in there clicking, trying to get it. And I was like, oh man, they're putting me in tier 2, but that's okay. And I did get lucky. I got it, I want to say mid-April is when I got mine. So I've had mine for a couple months now. It was not delivered to me by the lead of Steam. What's his name again?
Gabe?
Yeah, Gabe. So Gabe didn't knock on my door with it, but I was lucky enough to get it kind of a little, a few months earlier than. But I'm really excited too, because they've been ramping up their shipping, so a lot more folks are getting their hands on this thing, and it's really exciting for me to see everybody land with it and then start to play with it, and it's been a lot of fun just hearing that a bunch of other people are now able to play with this thing, because it's cool.
Yeah. And let me just say, we all should be so lucky to have Gaben personally deliver a Steam Deck to us, if only. God, I would die a happy man. Anywho's, let's talk about this thing a little bit. But first, in terms of, like, you mentioned Game Gear, you mentioned the Switch, you are a handheld guy. What has your experience with handhelds been? Like, do you generally, I'm assuming you find them to be quite nice if you're a self-described handheld guy. But in addition to that, like, do you game on PC a lot? What's your experience like with that? Just kind of synthesizing all of these things and how they relate to the Steam Deck.
Yeah, sure. So my history with handhelds, the first gaming system that I ever got my hands on was a Game Boy. It was a hand-me-down from a family friend, but that my parents, for the longest time, they didn't want any video games in the household, right? But we were able to sneak that Game Boy in there. And I just have very fond memories. The Game Boy is one of those systems that I still love. I collect for, but I'll be honest, it's an outdated system, right? But they have some really cool things out there. There's another cool toy called the Analog Pocket, which is kind of like a Game Boy for 2022, which I was lucky enough to get my hands on that as well. But that Game Boy was my first system, so I have a very soft spot in my heart for it. And then a neighbor friend had the Game Gear, and he would let me borrow it all the time, so I played that a lot. But then as far as handheld gaming goes, those were like my two main ones. And then the Nintendo Switch, finally, when that dropped, that was not the easiest thing to get a hold of either right away when it first came out. I actually was on vacation with my wife. We went to Hawaii, and I found it in a Target in Hawaii, and I was like, babe, this is going to be my Hawaii thing. I'm bringing it home as my souvenir. And she's like, okay, whatever. But that's how I got a hold of my Switch, right? And I do play Switch docked, but just by nature of, I just love, like I said, like I love playing games. I like the mobility of it, being able to sit on the couch. If my wife is watching something that I'm not necessarily as interested in, it's kind of cool to be able to pick up the Switch or whatever it is and play that handheld. And the Steam Deck, very similar to that. It's handheld as well, and it has that same mobility that the Switch has, but it allows me to tap into that PC library that I've started to build up. And I haven't been, as a kid I PC gamed, and then for a long time I didn't. I just didn't have a computer that could handle some of the newer games, etc. But I did end up getting a nice rig that I can play a lot of games, and like a lot of folks that are PC gamers, that Steam library has been slowly just growing and growing and growing. And this Steam Deck, I tell you what, is a really cool, it's great playing games on the PC. I still do it a lot. But the Steam Deck allows me to play a lot of the library that I haven't maybe had the opportunity to get into because I didn't want to be on my computer, because I also work on my computer, right? So having that Steam Deck allows me to kind of move out of my home office and pick up some of those games that maybe I just didn't have the energy to continue sitting down at my desk and playing. So it's been cool.
Yeah, I can echo a lot of that. I also grew up with the Game Boy. Game Boy was my first handheld system as well. And I guess
Nice.
technically my first system. I'm not sure. It was either Game Boy or Sega Saturn. Who can say? Not the original Game Boy though. Not the chunky boy. I had a green Game Boy Pocket was my first one. The real
Nice.
dark, dim screen. Wasn't as ugly with the green tint, but still a struggle to see. And I have a lot of affection for those as well, man. I some of my fondest memories are playing Game Boy Color or my favorite of the lot, the Game Boy Advance SP. And maybe something has to do with it. Maybe one thing that has to do with it is just the fact that at that time everybody in school also had one, like elementary school, that is to say, middle school. But I just have such fond memories of those systems. I love them so much. And after that, though, I really wasn't a big handheld gamer. I didn't pick up a Switch until COVID hit, like in that's not entirely true. It wasn't right at the beginning of 2020 because that would have been impossible. It was like towards, the beginning of 2021, maybe the end of 2020 was when I picked mine up. I also play a lot of docked mode. I don't, there are some things with the Switch compared to the Steam Deck that we can maybe talk about, but I don't play it as much handheld. And when the Steam Deck got announced, I had a mix of feelings because I'm not a huge handheld guy, aside from my extremely positive memories of, the Game Boys. I think I played a Game Gear once or twice, maybe. Big chunky thing with Sonic and Road Rage and all that stuff.
Battery killer.
Yeah. Well, they all kind of were.
Right.
But the thing about the Steam Deck that you touched on that made it a game changer for me is the Steam library integration, right? It's a big step for Linux gaming too. I'm just kind of an admirer from afar when it comes to Linux, but the Steam library handheld to me was just this massive draw. I got into PC gaming kind of late. I started actually at the very beginning of 2020 before COVID hit, which was like the best time to get into it. And I just love it. I love everything about it. I love frankly, the amount of power you can get. I love the versatility. I also love having a machine that I can, do emails on in addition to throwing up Fortnite or something. But I love it. And when I thought about playing some of these Steam games handheld on what is basically a handheld laptop, I was just so jazzed about it. And I'm so happy to see that it's being received so positively. Although there are some negatives that people are talking about, but we can maybe.
Yeah, it's their first piece of. It's cool, man. It's the first true I don't know. Early on, people were being like, it's going to be the Switch killer, which I just don't think it is. I think it hits a different market, right? I think it's definitely geared towards someone that is more PC friendly, and that is one thing about this thing that I've noticed that. I love playing with it and tinkering with it, but if you're giving somebody, if you wanted to introduce someone to gaming, or if you were buying this for a kid or something, I would honestly go with the Switch just because that's out of the box, ready to go. And this is actually getting a lot better as time goes on. There's more and more games that are Steam verified or whatever they call it. There's a special thing for when a game is officially good to go. Great on deck is what I think they call it, or something like that. But anyways, there's otherwise to get all of your library working, you might have to tinker a little bit with the games or the controls, which I enjoy because I'm that type of person. But if it's not going to be as approachable for somebody that is not looking for that experience.
And especially too because it is a Linux-based system. It's not. If you are familiar with Windows, chances are you're familiar with Windows if you're somebody that tinkers with emulators and stuff like that. But even if you're familiar with iOS or Mac OS, I suppose, it's very different than Linux, and there's a learning curve. It's not a full-on, Linux kernel machine. It technically is, but there's still that learning curve. And I'd be interested to hear your experience with that. I haven't actually tinkered with it at all yet. I've downloaded my emu deck. I haven't set up any of my BIOS yet. I haven't transported any of my ROMs over. So I haven't done any tinkering. The only games that I've played so far, thankfully, have been just download and go. It's been pretty great.
Cool.
But what have you done tinkering-wise to get games to work?
Yeah, so like you, I'm not, this was actually my first time poking around Linux at all. So with the Steam Deck, it has, you're basically, there's like the game launcher section of it. And then if you press and hold the power button, it gives you the option to go into desktop mode. So it switches over and then it lets you play around. I can't remember which version of Linux it is, but it's it's basically a Linux system. And if you have a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, you can actually use those to poke around on it like a computer. And I do really like that. That said, Linux isn't as forgiving as a Mac or a PC.
Yeah.
So there's certain things that you can do where you can really break Linux if you're tinkering too much. So I've been trying to be a little careful with how much I play with it, and I haven't done too many things. But it's been cool. I have loaded up. So Steam actually added what is it called? RetroArch. So RetroArch was added to Steam, so that actually makes your emulation pretty streamlined and simple for a lot of different things, which is pretty cool. But you can obviously load your different stuff on there, but that's a really simple way that I've started playing with ROMs and emulation on the Steam Deck. I will say, though, I have had some trouble. There's certain games that just don't work on it yet. I have seen online that some people have gotten Assassin's Creed Origins to work, and that's one that I was excited to take away from my PC and maybe play on the couch. But I went and found some tutorials, and as the months have gone on, there's more people experiencing the same thing, but I just can't get their game launcher to work because they just don't play well with Steam, I guess. But you can actually go in and do some things in Linux to kind of side load it, and I just haven't had any luck. And I've like moved some files around, and I'm like, oh geez, I think I've like really messed this up. But it's not like it's not working, but I just wasn't able to figure it out. And this is one of those things.
It's scary because I feel like the possibility of bricking a Steam Deck versus like bricking a Switch, if you're trying to jailbreak that, it's significantly more of a risk because it's double if not more the price. It's an expensive little thing, and breaking it to get like I don't know, Wario Land 4 to work. It's like is that risk worth the reward? Who's to say? I don't know. But tinkering, I feel like there has to be a treasure trove of online videos and guides guiding folks through Linux to get some of the stuff working. If not now, then certainly in the near future they'll be out. So for folks like me that are a little more hesitant to do it, I think that'll be a really good thing,
Yeah, that's definitely the beauty of for someone, anybody that hasn't got it yet or is maybe in queue still, like I mentioned, I got mine in April, and that was still fairly early on. So that the amount of stuff that is in forums now or on YouTube, like every day there's more and more. So it's actually kind of a blessing to get it a little later because there's a lot more people that are putting that information out for folks, which is really cool.
They're walking so you all can run,
Exactly. I will say though, what's the with the amount of risk, the reward to play things like Wario or whatever, a lot of these Game Boy, I play a lot of Game Boy games on there, and the screen is pretty nice. It's a pretty big, it gives you a lot of real estate for some of these old like handheld systems or even Super Nintendo, that type of thing. I have a few, there's a plethora of different like basically handheld emulation devices that come out of China, and I imported one called, what was it called? I ended up selling it when I got the Steam Deck because the Steam Deck just blew it out of the water. I was like, I'm not going to play this thing anymore. Like, the Steam Deck is just hands down way, way better. The screen's way bigger, and it just ran all the games that I wanted to way better. So it's been cool.
I'm glad that you brought up some of the specs because that was a perfect segue into what I wanted to get into. You can find a lot of the specs, well, you can find all of the specs on Steam's website for this, steamdeck.com. So I'm not going to go over the processor, the RAM, the GPU, or anything like that, partly because I'm not super familiar with mobile designed GPUs and CPUs like I am with full-size ones. But one thing that I did want to touch on is the screen. It is 7 inches diagonally across. It is an optically bonded IPS LCD. The resolution 1280 by 800. That's a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. Little wonky, but not crazy bad. 60 hertz refresh rate, that is adjustable and variable. 400 nits brightness. For comparison, the Switch OLED is about 343 nits, which is just a little bit less than its counterpart that came before it. iPhone 13 Pro Max, about 1,000 nits. And Samsung heads out there, the 22 Ultra is about 1,350 nits. That's not to say this thing's not bright. I don't know where you've played this, Alex, or if you've noticed this, but I have never thought to myself, wow, this thing doesn't get bright enough. It gets pretty bright. It's pretty readable.
Yeah, I haven't had a problem with the brightness. I do have a Switch OLED, so I will say that there are certain times where I have a battle with myself, like, is this game something I want to play on the OLED or the deck? Because the OLED screen is super nice. It's something that, I've been a little spoiled by it now. And although this is technically I think it's the same size, but it has larger bezels and it's just not as rich in color because it's not an OLED, right? But that said, like then it just comes down to, do I want to pay the Nintendo premium to get a game and have it OLED, or do I want to just, pick it up on Steam where it inevitably will hit a nice sale eventually? So it's kind of tricky deciding now where I want to play these games.
Yeah, I think for me, it generally comes down to, obviously Nintendo exclusives, if you're not going the pirate route, are going to be on the Switch, but now that the Steam Deck is in the picture, I don't foresee myself really getting games that are on Steam otherwise on the Switch. Unless there's this big thing with playability, I don't foresee it happening. You mentioned the bezels. That is one thing about the Steam Deck that I noticed right away, is it is a machine that is built with functionality first and foremost. It's not a great looking device. It's kind of neat looking, but it is bulky, it's bulbous, but that bulkiness and that bulbousness enhances how it feels in the hand. I don't know if you feel the same way, but holding the Steam Deck, because of how bulbous the grips are, feels to me just leagues better than holding a Switch, which is sleek, it's stylish, but it just doesn't, it's too small, it doesn't fit, it's too thin. I don't have the Hori pads or any kind of grips on it or anything, so that might be a factor too.
Yeah, sure. No, when I play with my when I play with the Switch, I have a grip that I use, so that makes a big difference. But this one, you don't need the grip because you're right; it's designed to fit the hand really nicely. The D-pad, the joysticks, and your main like A, B, X, Y buttons are they're higher than I would have been used to on the Steam Deck, the actual Steam Deck. But it actually works ergonomically pretty well with where your thumbs will fall, right? At first, that did take me a little bit of being used to playing with PC games with like an Xbox controller or on the Switch. It was a little weird for me to have my hands kind of sitting there and then have those buttons way up at the top. But then as I continued to play, it became way less of a problem. And they've molded it to really fit your hand. And I thought it would be way heavier than it is. And that hasn't been a problem at all, which has been cool. But as far as like the style and look of it, if you love the Game Gear, you'll probably like this. but it is, it's a beast. It's big.
You're right. It is astoundingly light for the way it looks. You hear handheld gaming laptop, you look at the thing, you expect it to be hefty, but it really doesn't feel any heavier than the Switch. I haven't actually weighed the two side by side or done what I would, probably more likely do, Google it. But they don't actually feel that different. It's very nice. It's really very nice. Again, function over everything with this thing. The thumbsticks, the joysticks. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say something that if somebody were to come up to me afterwards and be like, "You're a fucking nerd, like, give me your lunch money," I would be like, "Yeah, well earned. But I'm kind of really particular about controllers. Like, I'm very particular about how thumbsticks feel and how triggers feel. I was shocked at how nice the thumbsticks in particular felt on the Steam Deck. The D-pad as well, I was really pleased with. It's not amazing. It's not like a Razer mechanical Switch D-pad, but there are so many bad D-pads out there that I feel like, they're batting above the average. I don't love the triggers. That's just a personal thing, but the thumbsticks especially feel so smooth. They've got a nice grip. They're not too high in terms of like height. It is weird having the right thumbstick to the left of the buttons. I agree with you there.
Mm-hmm. And they're on the same plane too, right? So like a lot of, I mean, I guess that's the case. No, I guess in newer controllers it's not. So sorry to cut you off, but about what you're saying though is the two joysticks are on the exact same plane, right? So whereas if you look at a new Xbox controller or a Switch controller or something like that, they'll be slightly, like one will be a little higher than the other one. So that took a little bit of time for me to get used to as well.
Yeah, there is a bit of a learning curve there. It does feel a bit wonky at first to have them both on the same plane and to be placed where they are. I found that it kind of faded into the background pretty quickly. Like I stopped noticing it once I stopped thinking about it. Whereas something like, I don't know. Well, I mean, using the Joy-Cons, like playing Smash with Joy-Cons or Mario Kart with Joy-Cons, that's something that still to this day, like I notice the way that feels. Just because Nintendo put out, the Pro Controller, which feels so much better, and Joy-Cons just, they feel tough to play to me because they're so tiny, because they're for kids, rightfully, as they should be. It was a great decision on Nintendo's part. But you are right. The other area that felt weird to me at first was the placement of the back buttons.
Oh, yeah. Those kind of weird me out too. I still haven't I love that they're there, but I haven't gotten to a point where they make a lot of sense to me.
So the first thing that I noticed was like so the way that, for those that haven't seen the Steam Deck, you might want to look this up because I don't know how great I am at describing things if I don't write it down first, which is a great quality for a podcaster to have. But when you're holding the Steam Deck, your fingers are going to kind of curl under the bulbous part of the hand grip. And that is where those triggers lie. The triggers kind of cradle the curvature. And when I first grabbed it, I was pulling my fingers into the triggers away from the center of the Steam Deck, which is not where the actuation button is. The actuation button is actually pressing into the Steam Deck towards your body. It's on the other side of the paddles. That weirded me out at first. It took me like a solid week to get used to that.
Right. Yeah, so those back buttons are a lot like the Xbox Elite controller. If someone's ever seen that, it's like 4 extra buttons that are on the back that you can hit with your other digits, I guess. So you like your ring finger, your middle finger, and they make a lot of sense. They're just, I don't know. I also don't play a lot of games that need that. But I, like I said, I love that they're there, but they just feel awkward to me when I do go for it. I feel like I have to put too much pressure, and I think it might be because I'm pulling to the side, and I maybe haven't figured that out. Maybe it's because I have to start pushing up.
Yeah, speaking from experience, it's much easier to just push up and have that actuate. It's a strange choice. Now that I know what to do, it doesn't feel as weird, but yeah, I saw somebody post on the Steam Deck subreddit about it actually, and they were like, "Did anybody else feel weird about this?" And I was like, "Yes, thank you."
Interesting, yeah.
I'm with you.
Have you had the chance to so it sounds like you and I started getting more into PC gaming around the same time, actually. That's around the same time that I got my computer as well. So I missed out on the whole Steam controller. But, what's cool is, if you take a look or if you know about the Steam controller, they brought a lot of what they made with that, or, Valve brought a lot of what they made with that Valve Steam controller into the Steam Deck. And one of those big things is the trackpads, which I think on the Steam Deck, the trackpads are pretty righteous, dude. At first, I didn't really know what to do with them, but now that I've figured them out and gotten used to them, they're super cool.
So it's funny you mentioned that. I've had a Steam account since like 2017, but that was before I had a laptop that could run most games. I would run like Skyrim at the lowest possible settings. I would have to go into the files and like take out INI files and add like these tweaks to get like Skyrim and Rocket League to run. But I did have a Steam controller. And
right on. Cool.
I ended up, I sold it pretty quickly back then. I rebought one in 2021 just because I saw it on Facebook Marketplace for like $50. And I was like, well, that's incredible.
Hey man, $50, that's a steal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I hate that controller. I'm not gonna lie to you. But the one thing about it that is genuinely great are those trackpads. And I mean, it's the same thing on the Steam Deck, just focused, and the texture feels a little better. Those haptics feel so satisfying whenever they're going.
Oh man,
they feel great.
They're really cool. I really even when it boots up, it's like not even a game, and I'm still like, oh yeah, let's go. It's fun.
I haven't actually. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's just funny because like as the system boots up or whatever, all the haptic parts of the Steam Deck will give it a little shake or whatever it's doing in there, and it's just a little exciting little thing, get you ready to play.
It's very nice. It's a little tease. It's a little treat.
Right. And it's actually super intuitive for when you it's actually super intuitive for when you bring up like the keyboard display or something like that. So it does have a touch screen, so you can go ahead and tap on the screen. But I'm a weirdo and I don't like having fingerprints all over my screen. So I generally will gravitate towards using the trackpad, and you can actually use on those haptic trackpads both your thumbs at the same time to use the cursor. Like it actually goes into dual cursors, and it's like a super slick way to just tap in whatever you're trying to type, it's been cool. And it's also cool, and you can do a lot of customization in the games, which I started to play with more with how things are controlled. And something we have, this is a twofold, I guess. One, you can use those haptic trackpads to do a lot of movement in the games, or you can decide to do different things with them. It's really nice. But the deck also has the gyro, which is super cool, and I love having that like brings a lot of these PC games for me to the next level. It's I have a friend of mine that called it it's the Splatoon effect, right? For all the Nintendo heads, adding that gyro to a first-person shooter was a big deal, or is a big deal for a lot of people that play that game. And now that's something that you can get on PC games because you have gyro that is included with this Steam Deck.
So I want to get into the gyro, the gyro aspect. One thing you mentioned, you don't like fingerprints on the screen, and then you said you're just weird like that, buddy. The audience can't see, but I have microfiber cloths like on my desk. I have two of them, one for my phone and the other for like my screens, like the Switch and Steam Deck. I'm right there with you. It bugs me. Really bugs me.
That's great. I actually got a couple on my desk right now too.
The gyro stuff. I don't want to say opposed, but like I will never use any kind of motion control unless I absolutely have to.
You're a purist.
I always attribute this to my first motion control experience being Star Fox Zero on the Wii U, which I don't know if you've ever played that, but it is one of the worst design control schemes ever. Like you have, it's abysmal. But that put me off motion controls for a long time outside of like Wii Sports. So I don't use that stuff very often. What are you using it for? Like do you have any examples in games or any kind of mechanics or whatever?
Yeah, any first-person shooter that I'm playing on the Steam Deck, I'll throw it on there because it's for people that have played like Breath of the Wild. Being able to. What I really like about it is you can use your joysticks to aim your bow and arrow or whatever. But then if you give the controller, your Pro Controller, or if you're holding the Switch in handheld mode, you can just like move the whole thing a little bit, and it gives you just that slight little tweak. Which mimics, doesn't mimic, but it gets you closer to the control that you get with a mouse. Like that's a lot of PC gamers really love a mouse because how much control they have for first-person shooters, and that is one thing. I'm just not very good at those type of games to begin with. But so like when I'm playing, I often will get frustrated that like when I PC game the Xbox, I use an Xbox controller and that doesn't have gyro. So sometimes I'll get frustrated, and most of the time I'll gravitate to a keyboard and mouse for first-person shooter type games. But there's certain games that, I want to use my joystick for. And let me see, what are some? So I was playing some, what is it, Deathloop? Deathloop is really nice with the gyro. Also, Half-Life 1 and 2. Half-Life 1 doesn't work. It's not right out of the box super ready for the deck. Which is kind of funny because it's by Valve and it's like one of their first games. But Half-Life 2 is, and actually with Half-Life 1, it's very small tweaks, and like the things that doesn't make it 100% ready is that like the fonts are too small and that type of thing. But yeah, those games in particular, Deathloop and the Half-Life games, are ones that I've really enjoyed that gyro because when I'm running around and I can't use a keyboard. I guess you could use a keyboard and mouse with the deck if you wanted to, but it's why would you? It's been really nice. It's been really nice to have that extra tweak for when I'm aiming at something or running around, or even like looking around is kind of fun. Like you actually, for me, it's an immersion thing too, right? Because as I move the system, like the screen will move with me, and it's just kind of cool. I just dig it.
Yeah, I can see that. As speaking to the immersion aspect, I feel like I was thinking about this on my drive home today. I drove out to do an errand, and on the ride home, I was thinking about this. It's, if I want to be immersed in something, there's a good chance that I'm not going to play it on the Steam Deck. And I wanted to end with sort of the games that we've played so far, but just as a little teaser for what is going to be a shorter episode anyway. How do you like that? One of the games that I played on and finished on both the Steam Deck and my PC, like using Cloud Save, was Life is Strange 3, True Colors.
Oh, nice.
And that is a game that, one, is just very beautiful. It has great sound direction. It's an immersive experience. And I found myself appreciating it more on PC. Like, it was a better experience. That's not to say it was a bad experience on the deck, but I played it more on the deck because of the portability factor, because I could fire it up in my bed, at the table, on the couch, on the floor. I could, I didn't have to sit at my desk. When it comes to immersion, and I was thinking about this with games like Witcher 3, like these really graphically intense and atmospheric games, Witcher 3, Disco Elysium, Fallout, any of the Fallouts that are 3D, I'm not certain that I would choose Steam Deck as a primary way of playing them. I like having the option. Better to have it than not, But I don't know. That immersion aspect, I think about that a lot. Or I was thinking about it a lot, I should say. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any further thoughts on that? Just in terms of like immersion as an element of play rather than like as a mechanic, like with first-person shooters?
Yeah, I think, well, one thing is the Steam Deck's not going to be as powerful as your PC, just because it doesn't have, or depending on the PC, but it likely just doesn't have the same beefy specs, right? And then you're also, even though it's cool to have the handheld system and you got the screen and everything in your hand, like it's just not going to be as big of a screen. And like if you're wearing headphones, that might help. But the speakers on this thing are actually pretty good. I like them better than the Nintendo Switches. But you're also not getting the same audio quality. So like getting really pulled in and immersed in the game is not going to be quite the same. I actually haven't been able to do this just because of the way that my apartment right now, the internet works. My office is unfortunately in like a weird dead zone where it doesn't it's not hardwired. So my Wi-Fi isn't as nice as it is out in like the living room per se. So the Steam Deck actually gives you the ability to stream games from your PC to the deck. So you don't actually have to have them loaded on the Steam Deck, which is pretty cool. But it's not something I've been able to play with yet. So for instance, like Red Dead Redemption 2 is a game that I was playing for a while and really, really enjoyed. But I did put it on my Steam Deck, but the it just wasn't as pretty because I'm running a computer that has like an NVIDIA 3080, so that's like able to do some pretty cool things and really nice frame rates and all that stuff, and then just a bigger screen. So I actually was playing it on the deck, but it was, more if I was just going to ride my horse around, didn't really want to get anything done in the game. I just wanted to play. Because I wasn't able to really get as into it, and it also crashed on me a bunch. It's not a game that's verified for the deck yet. So I would get a solid like 20 minutes and it'd crash, and I'd be like, oh man, I got to start it over. So like I said earlier, it's not the perfect system there, but they've been doing a lot of updates, and it's becoming more and more of like more of a streamlined out of the box type of thing. But it's not perfect, but I do really enjoy it.
That's one of the two biggest complaints that I've seen about it so far is the bugginess aspect. And, here's the thing. Well, actually, the other complaint is that of battery life and temperature. To those folks that genuinely are upset about that, I say, have you ever played on a gaming laptop? Because if you have, I don't think that you would be raising these complaints. It's the same struggle, man. It's just, they shrunk it. But, to the point of bugginess, it's like, I can see why that would be frustrating, especially if you have a huge Steam library and like you want this to be a primary mode of play. But at the same time, this is a pretty big step forward in terms of like gaming at this scale. It hasn't been done yet. It hasn't been done before. Valve is really paving the way with some of this stuff, and I am not a developer. I am not a coder. I cannot imagine how difficult and how time-consuming this must be. Like, I work next to coders, not physically, but like I defer to them a lot of the times for my job, and even fixes that you would think are simple can take a long time because of just how in-depth the coding can be. I have nothing but respect for these people that are going in and making these incredible things happen on the Switch, on the Steam Deck. Yeah, I mean, hell, even the Game Gear. Like it's amazing to me. So it's frustrating. I get it. I'll never complain about it, just because like I'm just amazed that we're here. Like I hate to sound
Totally.
like a fanboy, but it's just amazing that we're here, right?
Totally. And what's funny, Rick? There's so you mentioned the heat of the thing, and I know that that's been something that's picked up in the press, and people have complained about a little bit. But honestly, I haven't noticed it too much. But so the vents of this thing are on the top, right? And every once in a while, when it's really trucking along, I'll tilt it up towards me and take a whiff, and I just love that hot plastic smell blasting in my face.
Oh,
it's
man.
like, how some people are into like the smell of gasoline or something. I guess I just love burning plastic in my gaming devices.
Dude, I was playing, surprisingly enough, Life is Strange 3, like really it like takes some power to run, and so the thermals were just going. Like it was cooling.
Yeah.
It was blowing out that hot air. And I tilted it up towards my face and it hit my lips and I could feel them like drying out extremely. I was like, oh my God, it's cool, but it's crazy.
Right. But it smelled kind of good, didn't it?
Oh yeah. Listen, you're not gonna. There is a non-0% chance if you see me playing the Steam Deck, you're gonna see me take a little whiff.
I love it.
It's speaking of the cooling though, and you mentioned the sound quality of the speakers. I kind of do recommend playing this with headphones if you're gonna be playing an immersive game. If you've played on a gaming laptop before, which was where I started, you're not gonna. This is gonna seem like the quietest thing in the world because gaming laptops just need to put out a lot of cooling. But it's loud compared to the Switch. It's loud. You're going to notice it, especially if scenes are quiet. I just threw in earbuds. It works fine. Works perfectly fine.
Yeah, I generally always have my headphones in when I'm playing it as well. I am, like I said earlier, I am impressed by the speakers that it has, but it's better to play with headphones.
Yeah, absolutely. Haven't had any quality issues in terms of the Bluetooth connection. That's kind of standard these days, but it's worth mentioning. Let's finish up here. These episodes are going to be shorter, more casual. Obviously, I mean, I didn't write anything down for this. I'm flying off the seat of my pants here, but
I can dig
it. Let's talk about a little bit of what we played. So you mentioned Red Dead. What else have you played on the deck that you thought went really well? Or what have you played that maybe didn't go so well?
Sure. Yeah, so I had a fantastic experience playing Portal for the first time ever on the Steam Deck. Honestly, that for me, it's a quintessential Steam Deck game. Like, I know a bunch of people have already played it, but play it again on Steam Deck. It's super fun, and it incorporates that gyro that I was talking about really nicely because technically it's a first-person shooter, but you're not like shooting enemies or anything. You're running around shooting your portal gun. And that is a game where moving the deck around and having your field of vision or whatever change with that it's super fun, and it just works really well. I've been really impressed how Portal, and now I'm about, I don't know, maybe a quarter into Portal 2, and that has been really fun as well. So Portal 1 and Portal 2, awesome on the Steam Deck. Highly recommend. I've also been playing Stray on the Steam Deck primarily. I have played a little bit on my PC, and that's another thing about the Steam Deck that I love is it has that cross-save thing going on. So anything you start on your Steam library, you can just pick up on your computer or pick up on your deck, and you can just keep plugging along in whatever game, which is super cool. But Stray's been really great, and actually looks really great on the Steam Deck as well. But bringing up that, you brought up the battery life. I can get about an hour of Stray before the thing just dies on me because you can plug it in too, but it's like, what's the point? I don't want to be tethered when I'm playing handheld. Unless I really, really, really want to be plugging through a game. But those three games, I guess, have been absolutely fantastic on the Steam Deck. I've also had a good time plugging through a little bit of Journey. That's been really cool and looks really beautiful on the Steam Deck. I mentioned Deathloop earlier. I haven't played too much on there, but I have been impressed by it. So those games in particular, and the emulation, I do a lot of Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, all that stuff, and NES, like all of those systems are just really, really fun to play on the deck. To have those on the go has been really cool. So those are my favorites so far. Those are the ones that have kind of worked the best for me and been a really great experience.
God, I can't wait to get my emulation set up. I have so many PS1 games that I want to go through again, and I just can't wait to do it handheld. Oh, I'm so excited.
Right.
You mentioned Stray. That sounds like the perfect game for the deck. It's not a sweaty game. You're not going to be like trying too hard. It's very atmospheric. It's very aesthetic. It is, quote, big vibes, I think is what some of the children are saying these days. Or maybe they were saying that in 2017 and I just haven't caught up yet. But that seems like the perfect Steam Deck experience. Like Journey too.
It is. Yep. So and honestly, all those games, those have been really cool on the Steam Deck. They're just, because a lot of them aren't like super intense. You can kind of, go around and be a little bit more casual about it. And I think that's part of the handheld experience, I guess. And if you really want to get a little bit more immersed, it saves your file and you can go right onto your PC.
Oh, one thing before I get into what I was playing that we didn't mention. Well, you mentioned it. There are verification settings for how well a game will work on the Steam Deck. Mm-hmm. Because remember, all of these games require some tweaking by the dev teams. So like work is going into this. And at this point, like upwards of 5,000 titles are available. It's insane what they're doing. It's so cool. I checked. My library has 204 games. Out of those 204, 89 are, quote, great on deck. They are verified on deck. They work well, at least according to Valve. It will work. The rest are a mixture of playable, unsupported, and unknown. My experience with playable has largely been they work great. A lot of the disclaimers on playable rated titles will just say things like, you need to use the on-screen keyboard at certain points and not the buttons, right. Or like text might not be visible. I haven't run into that yet, but I know it's an issue. Unknown, you're just rolling the dice. And unsupported, there are some games that I have that are unsupported, specifically like visual novels, that I was very surprised about because they're not like intensive. And I know that they still need some kind of tweaking, but I was just very surprised. You're just reading text. I was looking forward to doing that.
Yeah, and if anyone listening hasn't listened to Rick's visual novel episode, go check it out. It's really good.
Jeez. Thanks,
I listened to it the other day, man. No, it was fun. It was cool. It was cool to have you do that for him, and I really enjoyed it. So you mentioned you had 200 and some odd games. Well, I did the math quick, and it's so roughly 40% of your library works great on deck. And then I have 76 games and 25 are great on deck. So my games, this is more around 30%, are 100% ready to go. But I agree, but I also would echo what you were saying about the fact that most of the things that they're saying aren't perfect, are something that you can tweak yourself. And I've also noticed since I've gotten this, it is, it's a Steam machine, right? So it's there's a huge community working on these things, and there's a really cool, when you go into your controller settings, this wasn't the case back in April, but now there's so many people that have started to get these things and work on these things that there's user created controller layouts that you can automatically download to the deck, which is super nice, especially if you if you want to go through and actually customize the game, whatever you're playing, to be perfect for whatever you exactly want it to do, you have that ability. But you can also go in and see what the community has done, and they've been upvoted, etc. So you can see if something is someone's created a custom layout and it has thousands of upvotes. It's like, well, maybe I'll check that out. And a lot of times it really makes that experience, way better, and honestly makes it great for the deck. So that's been really cool. And it's been cool to see that, the community, and it's not uncommon of the Steam and the PC community to begin with, but it's cool to see that trickling into the deck. And it's just becoming a really, really cool device.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about the Steam community, compared to like the PlayStation community or the Nintendo community would actually be a better example, is that user-generated content and tweaks are encouraged by just everybody, including Steam. And it's great.
Yeah, right.
It's great because it's, that's at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's not about Steam making, well, I mean, it is about Steam making money, but the art comes first in a lot of cases.
Right. I think they put out a press release a while ago where they actually made the CAD designs for the deck available so that people can 3D print their own cases for it and everything. It's super. They're really encouraging customization of this thing, which is cool. And you just wouldn't get that out of, Sony or Nintendo.
Yeah, I think the last time a company tried to make Sony like PS5 plates, they got sued. Shout out to D-Brand.
100%.
So I've been playing games that are a mixture of verified and, quote, playable. Chrono Trigger is playable. It's not, quote, great on deck. It's playable. 0 issues. Actually, that's not true. I had 1 crash.
Is it the text size? I know a lot of it, or is there any... I know that's a lot of times, like, I've noticed on games, I'm like, why? That's so weird why it wouldn't work, but it's because they deem the font too small, but I haven't run into a problem with anything like that.
I can't remember if that was one of them. The one that I remember is it said that you will need to use the on-screen keyboard, like if you wanted to rename a character. Mm-hmm. I mean, I never do. So it did have 1 crash after a boss fight where a cutscene was supposed to load. I had to redo it. No big deal. Otherwise, runs great. Frankly, I knock it down to 30 FPS, and battery life is great when you do that, and it looks great. It's terrific. The first game that I downloaded actually though was Spyro, the Reignited trilogy, and I played through the first level, just maxed out the brightness, frame rate, everything that I could. Man, it just looked so beautiful. I only played through the first level. I'm a sucker for Spyro, and it just looked super good. Life is Strange, as I mentioned, maxed those out as well. That takes a toll on the battery, but it's pretty crazy to have that kind of level of detail at 60 FPS in your hands. And I know there's one more. Oh, Night in the Woods. That's the last one. Works super great on the Steam Deck. We'll be doing an episode about that in September. That is actually one where I don't know, maybe this was something that I did wrong, but I think that one, Night in the Woods, does not have cloud save. So when I started on the Steam Deck and I went to play it on my desktop and I couldn't load. So that is something, most games nowadays do have cloud save, but on the off chance that yours does not, that's something to keep in mind starting it on your preferred device. Probably won't be an issue for most games. Sometimes it might be. So
totally. Yeah, the only game that I haven't really loved was, I think I mentioned it earlier, was Red Dead Redemption 2 just because it crashed on me. But to be honest, it wasn't verified by Steam, so I knew what I was getting in for. 2, I probably could have pared down like some of the specs, but I didn't want to. So that may have helped me. I also tried playing some Disco Elysium on there, and I didn't love it, but I think it's because just the way that the controller works for Disco. I don't know if you played with a keyboard and mouse or a controller, but I just don't love the way that they have set up the controller for it. And I think that's honestly because it runs fine. I just didn't like the way I was plugging around on it.
Yeah, I tried to replay with controller and I quickly switched off. I hate the way it feels not using mouse and keyboard. That's not the Steam Deck's fault. That's just
right.
CRPGs.
And that's kind of what I was thinking.
Keyboard and mouse.
Yeah. Totally. But otherwise, it's been really cool. Like I'm really happy with how it. I'll be honest, Rick, when it was like coming out, because there was also a lot of coverage in the media. They're like, this thing's gonna fail. No one's gonna want it. And I was like, oh man, I've just dropped this money on this ridiculous device that no one's gonna support and no one's gonna play. But it's been cool to see. The reception has been pretty good. And I did get the 64 gigabyte version, so the lowest tier. So they have other versions where you can get more memory space and then faster SSD cards in there or whatever. And I have the lowest tier one, and all my games are coming. I've got a 400 gigabyte micro SD card in there, and that's what all the games are playing off of. So it's actually pulling those games off the micro SD and not even on the memory from my actual Steam Deck. And it's been pretty smooth, and I've been really impressed with the fact that I can play these pretty big, like a game like Stray working perfectly on this tiny little micro SD. That's pretty wild.
And it is worth noting, too, that while the SD cards are easy enough to swap in and out, it's just a standard SD card thing, you can take it apart and add SSDs if you are the type that is willing to do that. It'll be a little more involved than slotting an SSD into your motherboard on a PC, but it is possible. However, it is not well, I don't want to say it's not necessary, but all of the models of the Steam Deck, from what I've seen, perform roughly the same. You're not going to get better performance if you sell your 64 gig and buy the 512 gig. It's not going to give you noticeably better performance. So that is nice. You can read up on all of the differences between those models on the Steam Deck site, but don't feel obligated to drop $650 thinking that the 64 gig is going to, be a less than adequate gaming machine, because that's not the case.
Totally.
Alex, I can confidently say, Steam Deck, I recommend it.
Verified.
Verified. PPR verified. LFG PPR verified. Let's go. Valve, write us a check,
sir.
Please.
Yeah, you can send that in the mail. I'll take it.
Dude, I am so happy to get you on the show. We've been talking about this for a while. When our show took a hiatus, it kind of threw a wrench into things. You will be back, and your co-host is invited too, but I know you and I have been talking, covering a game that we mentioned here. I think I actually gave it away, but just in case I didn't, I won't give it away now. But in the meantime, Alex, I want you now to plug a little bit of your show. It is a show that I genuinely enjoy listening to. It is Low 5 Gaming, the podcast. 2 episodes that I really liked. One was the one on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. That one you put out in July, I believe. Just good game, good, especially if you're into the SNES beat 'em ups. Super good. Another one that I was floored by was your newest episode. Well, not your newest technically, but one of your newest episodes called Identity in Gaming. These take more of an educational / abstract lens towards how gaming is functioning, especially being that your co-host is a graduate student, and that's kind of what his deal is, working through some of these topics. I listened to the whole thing, and I was blown away. I remember reaching out to you, and I was like, dude, this is good stuff. I really enjoyed it. So there's my plug for your show. Why don't you continue to plug your show?
Oh, thanks, man. That's super appreciated. It's been a pleasure just to finally have the chance to jump on the mic with you. We recently did the Retro Olympics with the Secret Levels boys, and that was a lot of fun. But it's been really cool to have this one-on-one with you and talk a little bit about the deck. And but Low 5 Gaming is a podcast that I do with my little brother Luke. And essentially, it's basically like a book club for video games where he and I go back and forth picking a game per month. We spend that month trying to get as far into that game, beat that game if we can, and then we convene and talk about our experience on that game, right? And then we do have a Discord, and in that Discord, we'll talk about what's happening, and we invite folks to jump in and kind of play along with us if they choose to do so, which is kind of cool. We have a few people that will, it's always fun to kind of make it a little bit more community driven, right? But it's kind of cool. I've been able to approach this thing and absolve a lot of my gaming sins. A lot of times I'll pick older games that are kind of staples that I feel like as a gamer I should probably play. Like Half-Life was one of them. Luke got me to play Skyrim for the first time. It's all these quintessential games that I never really got around to playing, and I'm finally being able to do it because of the podcast. But it's always a fun time. We really enjoy it. And then thanks so much for bringing up the Low 5 Education Project. So my co-host and brother Luke, as you mentioned, is a grad student. He's actually just finished up. This was his capstone project. But the Low 5 Education Project was meant to encourage and explore the use of video games in the classroom as a teaching tool. And you can access that at low5gaming.com/education, or you can just go to low5gaming.com and there's click through to find it. So Luke has written a series of articles that are around this idea of being able to successfully bring video games into the classroom and use them to help teach students. It's not. I just think that games have come such a far way in since their advent in the 70s, 80s, or whatever, where it's there's a lot of potential for them there. It's and then we also have companion podcasts to go with that. So one of the impetuses for him in creating that project was City Skylines. So that's our most recent mainstay episode is Skylines, which is a city builder sim that really inspired Luke and got him thinking about how he as a social studies teacher could maybe use a game like Skylines to help his students understand things like, city management, how, well, if anybody's familiar with Skylines, there's so many different things that you could apply to a classroom. Not perfectly, but that's what this is all about, is trying to figure out how to use these things, use these video games as a tool. So definitely check that out. And that's kind of what we got going on. Low 5 gaming.
Yeah, it's super cool, and big congrats to your brother too. I was at an education conference virtually in 2021, and there were a lot of academics presenting their research and their findings on gamification in the classroom. It is, right, I hesitate to call it a hot topic because of the connotations that comes with, but it's something that is starting to gain the steam that it deserves, I think. No pun intended with steam and gaming and all that. But that's super cool. I will admit I haven't read any of the papers. I almost called them companion papers, but that might be a little derogatory. But I will admit I haven't read those yet. I am looking forward to it when I get a spare moment or two. Can't recommend those enough. Can't recommend the whole podcast enough. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today and to plug your show and to share all the wonders that is the Steam Deck with these listeners of mine.
Oh, I tell you what, Rick, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, everybody. No plugs for me. This is a patron episode, so you all know the deal. You're subscribed. You probably are in the Discord. You know about the social medias. That's all from me. So thanks for listening. We're going to do this monthly. We'll see you next time.